Okay. So um, we can't do like the infinite scrolling thing because that's a bad idea, or is it like that to me that's like natural, but like do you think that's just a bad idea?
I like it. I can't think of a way to fix the jumping epics. I
What do you
hate.
mean by jumping, like stuff appearing out of nowhere?
Yeah, so if you're infinitely scrolling and then everything's shifting down one or up one, or
Right. So you're saying that say I scroll to the right into the future and then per the given sort an epic appears in between say two of them,
right.
um, and then it needs to be inserted.
Yeah, I just think that it's never going to be, in the best case, it would be, a smooth, everything just shifts down one and one just
Right.
appears magically. But it could be, we could be loading a ton of epics and it's never going to be as smooth as we'd want it to be, I'm guessing. And even if it was, I don't think it would look right. I don't have a prototype or anything, so I'm not sure.
Right.
But I don't know.
Right. So I'm thinking like that shouldn't happen if the sorts are reasonable. Like I'm tempted to agree with you, but I want to talk it through just to make sure
Yeah.
we're like exhausting this idea. So let me show you. Let me share my screen. So if you look at this, and so this is pretty cool because it was just released like an hour ago. So if you sort by start date, okay, yeah. So if you start by start date or due date, the jumping around won't happen. But if you sort by these two, it might. So let me just talk this through and convince myself it's maybe a bad idea. So something like this, then as you scroll to the right, then stuff will just pop in from the bottom, right? Because you're the start date.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be a problem. And then same for like due date, which is sort of I guess the reverse, right? I believe maybe not, but definitely I think if you do something like this, it can get crazy because yeah, because things could just be randomly appearing. Right? Is that correct? If you do
Yeah. Yeah. If your last updated one is
right, if it doesn't fall
right.
into right. No, that's exactly right. Because last updated, you're sorting by something that's not on this timeline, right? And
Right.
therefore things could just appear out of nowhere. And so you're saying that's a bad design. If I can scroll left to right, which is hard to visualize.
It's it's not great. I think it would be kind of jarring, especially if there were multiple ones that popped in kind of at
Mhm,
the same
mhm.
time, and all of a sudden, what you're looking at is not where your eyes just were, and you're like, "Wait, where did Get Elasticsearch
I see what you're saying.
go?"
Okay, that makes sense.
Um,
Yeah. So things like it's disorienting, or like say you were looking at this bar where my mouse is, and then
mhm.
you're scrolling to the right, and then suddenly it jumps up or down, or like in the worst case, it jumps like 5 rows up or down. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's pretty convincing.
I mean, pagination would sort of fix that, except it would still shift. Like if you hit,
Right.
next and it showed you the next 5 quarters, it would still be in a different spot. So, do you know why Pedro didn't like the idea of the date picker?
The date picker, so it's all wrapped up together. So from what I recall with the date picker, it requires you to first of all enter two dates, so that's cumbersome, and this is only one click. And
Yeah.
if I could find the issue, maybe that would be a better. So what was this called? Date picker.
As a project manager, do you really value the weeks, quarters, months buttons?
I value quarters because I just want to see as much as I can.
Right.
Um, yeah, so how I'm using it, so let's talk about how I'm using it as a user. So how I'm using it is I like start date because I can see what's coming up in the future, and I can see, like, oh, these two things are upcoming that I planned. Does it make sense that there's two things coming up as opposed to like, because I was actually just doing exercise. Today's Monday, right? So on Thursday, Friday, I had like maybe like five starting on the same, like approximately the same time. I'm like, oh, that's impossible that we can get so much done at the same time, and so therefore I push some things over. So that's therefore I love the start date view because of that.
Hmm.
And then I've heard of Job say he said, oh, due date makes sense, and I can see that as well because maybe he cares about when things are done and shipped and for the customer, right, for the user. So I think these two I use the most. I would use the most. Start date, I'm just always super concerned, like there's no way we can do that much, like, oh, I have to balance as a product manager. I'm scheduling constantly, right? So I have to push things later, or like I need to pull something ahead, so that's why I constantly start date, and then pretty much like created and last update are useless for me. And I believe we, as a feature, I would argue it's fine to keep these two, just precisely because of it makes sense in this view, right? And then we just wanted consistency. So
Right.
so
So
that.
with the date picker,
Mhm.
it is more clicks, but I was thinking, I'm trying to think of an airline maybe that does this, but I was thinking if you select one date in the date
Right.
picker, since we only show 18 months as a maximum in the quarters, I think that's a good amount because
Right.
if we get any more, you're not going to be able to read anything. So yeah, these all use two date pickers. Or wait, yeah, two date pickers. I wasn't
Right.
thinking that. I was thinking, you click one and then it would gray out everything that's not 18 months preceding or afterwards.
Okay.
You can click it. But if you clicked one that was 3 months away or 3 weeks away, it would highlight as you hover. You know what I mean? Like um,
So
yes, like that. So you would hover and it would grab all those and it would just be the one date picker. And then
mm,
the previous and what's the opposite of previous? What's wrong with me?
next.
Next? Yeah, okay. So the previous and next buttons would be more like
Incremental.
yeah, I was thinking by months just because week seems not as helpful,
Right.
but it wouldn't be within those dates. I mean shifting your entire date range by a month.
So, so let me try to understand what you're saying. First of all, you're saying that you're still picking two dates, right? The implementation, I don't care the specifics,
Yeah.
but you are still specifying two edges of time, right?
Yeah.
A start and then so you're saying, oh, that to me that's just more of like a design implementation. Whether you drag or you enter something, whatever, that's fine. And then so you're saying you have to determine that ahead of time to say, so I wrote all this stuff before I pinged you, and which is annoying. So I should have just pinged you. But like in this example, you say December. Oh, this is annoying. So you say you depart on January. What is this thing? This is horrible. Say you depart on January 1st, and then you return on June 30th.
Hmm.
And so you're saying that's, and then you click enter, and then that's you've predetermined that already. And so coming back to here, do you still have these three buttons?
I was thinking no.
And so if you don't have these three buttons, when you hit Jan 1 to June 30, what is displayed right away? Like what's the scale? Is it still so it's 18
All
months.
18 months.
Oh,
If that's
okay, so
yeah.
it's 18 months. So my example here is that it's going to be Jan 1 to, oh my God, this, I can't go further, to, sorry. Um, so Jan 1, 2018, and then I pick the other number to December 31st. So let's go in the future so we can do this properly. um, 2020, right? So this is 24 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so how does this work?
So
So then what do you show when you click enter after you've entered these two things?
my idea was that you can't do that. You can only pick a maximum of
Oh,
18 months.
you can only pick maximum of 18 months. Okay, so if you wanted to see, so you're not allowed to see more than 18 months. Right, that's
That
fine.
was an idea, because
This is nothing,
that's
yeah.
currently what we have on our screen
Mm-hmm.
on desktop. But it's a long time. But I don't know. Maybe there are users who want to see the forecast in the next 5 years. I don't know if that's
There is
valid.
no, there is a use case for that. I mean, that's what I want right now, right? So like I want to see that. I want to. So I'll tell you my even more specific use case is that we're trying to hire to realize this awesome vision, right? And so right now, given our current capacity, I'm trying to communicate that there's no way we're going to do all these things, and then so it's sort of really silly right here what I've done last couple of days, where just to put these toward the end. But what I really want to show Yob and the other people, and like Sid and folks, is to say like, given our current capacity, if we want to do everything here, it'll take us like 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really say that in this view. I could just say that verbally and show them what I prioritize for the first 18 months, and then have to give them like, here's a Google Doc showing the rest of the stuff in order, right? And then so that sort of defeats the purpose of this view. So I think my use case is a good
Okay.
one, and then also like just like a like a 5-year roadmap for like a really big company, that seems reasonable, right?
Sure. So when if you wanted to look at a 5-year roadmap, do you want to see all of it on one screen, or would you be okay with scrolling within that? Like
Hmm.
if you had 5 years, start and end date 5 years, and
Right.
it just showed the 18 months, and you could scroll because nothing would shoot in and out because it's already loaded.
Right. Right. That's a great question. If you were to see it on one screen, it would just be scrunched, right? And
Yeah,
then,
you probably couldn't put the months down or anything. It would just be,
but that's not unreasonable, right? So that's like, oh, how to do like, we have screenshots. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's not unreasonable to see them scrunch, because in that case, then it would be like we have quarters now, right? And it could be like the granularity would be like halves of years, like 2019 H1, 2019 H2, right? And then that's how you would show it. And so you definitely wouldn't show months. You
mhm.
maybe would barely show quarters if it's like a 5-year roadmap, but you would show halves, because 5 years times 2 halves per year is 10, and just having 10 blocks horizontally on a screen, that you can fit that. And then I think that would make sense, right? So like you're a big company, you say like, this year we're going to focus on this part of strategy and organization, blah, 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 and then we're going to grow, and then something else.
Yeah. So in that scenario, we've got the date picker, and we still have the quarters, months, weeks,
So,
but we
so
have also added halves.
right. So what I would propose there is that the bars don't matter, right? Because bars are just like infinitesimal points in time, but GitLab the UI should just adjust, right? It should know that your date picker. So this is where like I think we should choose one and not give too much configuration. Like, say we say we let them show 5 years on the page all at the same time, and say we wanted to do that for the use case I mentioned, then GitLab wouldn't show like months on these tick marks, as I'm calling them. It would just show like the
Hmm.
beginning of the halves, right? And I think that would be a great design. But then my question is that would you want to offer that as well as the option which you were talking about, which is I think just as a great another use case, which is you're scrolling forward, right? It would show you 18 months and then you could keep scrolling and then see the rest of the stuff.
Right.
Because I don't know, because if you because let me propose this. So you have this, and then say it shows 18 months, which means it would be Jan 1, 2019 to June 30th, right? So this is 18 months. And then this is what it would load. It would load this all on one page. And then, so this is version 1. And then you click or scroll left, right to see more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying? So my alternative design is that you load this all on one page. So it's 18 months fixed, right? So, and then the alternative design is you see all Jan 1, 2019 and up to December 31st, 2020. And then GitLab UI will adjust tick marks appropriately. So like, I'm thinking, why shouldn't version 2 be always the case you want? Like, why would you need this case?
I don't know, probably because you could see more specific dates if you're
Right.
interested in that.
Yes, so this you can see more detail, and then you could achieve this level of detail here. Is this what Pedro was talking about with the slider craziness then?
He's talking about, yeah, any date range that you want, and then I think it was adjust within that date range, probably a max of 18
Right.
months as well, which I see the benefit of that too. I don't like sliders. We don't even have sliders in GitLab, so that's a new component, and I think that might take more than this release to
Well, we can. I mean,
design.
then that's fine. Like, let's do it correctly. Like, we can
Right.
take more time.
Well, yeah, but it's not just that. It's sliders on mobile, at least, are kind of a pain if you're trying to get specific. And I think with the mouse, it's about the same. Like, it depends on if are we allowed to adjust the left and right side of the slider, or is it just like a fixed 18-month
Right.
slider that you're shifting back and forth? That might work, I guess, but I don't know how.
Well, then let me abstract it away from a slider and say this is what you get loaded all on one page, and then there's additional UI which lets you zoom into the subset of this date range, right? And then slider seems like a great design, but like you can maybe a terrible design is you have 2 additional date pickers within here. That sounds like horrible, right? But you know, you get my idea, right? Like this seems reasonable as a first thing that you see on the page, and then it seems reasonable from there that you can maybe you just drag your mouse from like left to right, and then it just zooms in there.
What do you mean by that? Drag your mouse from
So like you say you're here, and then you drag from one corner, like you drag from this here to here, and then you've selected the smaller date range, and then GitLab zooms in right away, something like that, which is like almost like a slider, right? So.
Yeah, and in that case, we could remove the quarters, months, weeks option, right? Because we're running out of room on. Okay.
Yes. So what this proposal version 2, I don't think needs quarters. Yeah, because right now this is serving double duty. It's serving the edges as well as the granularity, right? And it's sort of making an assumption of what typical screen sizes are anyways. Because I think it's all hard coded, right? These things, like the 18 months for quarters, and then months is like another number that's hard coded. Same for weeks, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to be done yet, but I do like the idea of picking your dates, any dates. It's all shown, and it's never mind actually, because you won't be able to see the months, so you can't. I like the idea of it being there, and then you going like basically like a slider, but within the app already.
Right.
But if we can't see the months, then that's not going to work, which means.
You mean it's not going to work in that it's harder to drag?
Yeah, it's so vague, it's so broad that it's hard to pinpoint what exactly you're seeing. And when I first,
but as you drag, it becomes more refined, and you can. Yeah, but I don't see any, like, I haven't used any app that does that, so maybe that's a sign that it's not a good idea.
yeah,
But,
and then there's mobile considerations. Although actually, I don't even know.
well, even with mobile, like, I wouldn't be too concerned. Like, we can just have gracefully degrade the UI, right? Like just not have that just not available, right? And maybe just allow you to select the start date and end date, and then you're not allowed to zoom in for mobile. That to me, that's a great design.
Google Maps is pretty much broken on mobile right now anyway.
Okay.
It doesn't work at all. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a horizontal UI, and a mobile view is just by definition a bad idea, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is for that. Okay, so just forgetting mobile right now. Yeah, maybe that would be the idea, or the way to go. When you first proposed this issue and you said just scroll horizontally, is that because that was something that you were like, that was what you wanted to do? You wanted to see what was next in this view.
Yeah, so to me that seems very natural, where like this specific use case, right? It's start date, and I want to see further, and I know there's like, oh, if I could just go like to the first quarter of 2020, that would be awesome, right? And then that's why it made sense to me. Like, but I do recognize what we said earlier, right?
Right. And so where did your thing go? Oh, can you go back to your notes? So version 1, or wait. So you see 18 months of your entire date range, and then you can scroll. Right. That is sort of what you were suggesting in the first place, but
that's, yeah, no, if yeah, that's exactly, you're right. This is sort of like, yeah, that's pretty much true. Well, the difference is, like, my version is you don't specify this, right? So it's infinite scrolling and then stuff appears. But I think in both version 1 and 2, you've already specified this. And therefore you already know if they would pop into play. So I guess there's another consideration for version 1, which we didn't talk about, which is if you see all 18 months here, and then the 19th month, like say July of 2020, and then there's an epic that's again weird. You still have the same problem of stuff jumping in, right? You can sort of pre-render it, and you can have these like empty rows, even when you're viewing the 18 months. But then that's sort of silly, right?
What do you mean by that? If July of 2020?
So I'm saying, like, say you have like, say this, this is terrible, and then. So this is like, say these are like 3 epic roadmap bars, and then this is like what you would see for all like 24 months, for example, right? And so if you do version 2, everything is well defined because you see these 3, and then say you zoom into say this one here, then it would just be empty, right? Like when you zoom in left and right, oh my God, how do I explain this? It would just be empty. The top and bottom would be empty, right? I assume, or would you squash them if they don't appear?
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
So let me
Which one of those? What
let me talk about version 2 first because I think it's easier to explain. Let me try again. So say so this is January, and then this is like uh, let's make it this really simple, right? So March, and then this is I don't know, let's just go like June, and then this is like December, right? And then so when you first load everything, you see everything, right? And then now you've decided to zoom to October to December,
mm-hmm.
right? And then now you only see, so this is epic 1, this is epic 2. So now you only see 2. So you only see 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then B, right? Sorry, I keep changing things. And so how would you view it? Would you view 3 rows or would you view one row? So do you view 3 rows or do you view one row?
So
And
you
with
only have October to December in your
right,
screen now.
yeah, and from your like the squishing dimension. And so do you view 3 rows with the top and bottom row being empty, right?
Oh, yeah. I guess I assumed it would just be only showing B. It would just be one row.
And so when you do that, like there's, isn't it sort of back to what we talked about earlier, how things appear and disappear? So,
In this case, I think it's just how it happens when you resize your screen and it shows the loading spinner and redraws everything. And I
okay.
think it would be like that.
Okay, so you don't, so this is one example where, so you wouldn't find that dissonant where, say you had like 10 epics and the epic you were looking at was like the, say the 8th epic, and then you resize and then that epic that we're looking at suddenly jumps like say near the top of the screen because you zoomed in like that. So that's not weird because there's a reloading thing.
I don't think so, especially
Okay.
because it'll say like these are the months you're looking at.
Okay. So you're forced to readjust your perspective anyways. Is I think
Yeah.
what you're saying. Okay. So 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 I think you're saying like I don't know. This makes sense. Okay. Now let me say my point is that version 1 you have a similar problem, right? So where this is the sort of the opposite problem, right? So you only see January to June in beginning. So if I so you see 2 rows and then you scroll over to what June to December, or not June, like July, right? You now see only one row,
Hmm.
right? So pretty much analogous to what you said. Okay, so like no, yeah, I was just concerned that this looks weird, but I think what you're saying is that it's different from the infinite scrolling thing because in infinite scrolling you're not re-rendering the page, but in here you are. Okay.
Right. And if in infinite scrolling, oh, the dates are changing actually, aren't they? Never mind. Yeah, the infinite scrolling, I feel like you're looking at a certain row and you're watching it, and then all of a sudden the row starts shifting. Whereas in this case, you're kind of zooming in and out, which
I see what you're saying. In infinite scrolling, the one date dimension or one edge is fixed, whereas in zooming, potentially both are. So you're sort of resetting your perspective, which infinite scrolling is you're just going further into the future or further into the past.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this is yeah. It's not a huge problem. But anyways, I guess back to this discussion. I like version 2 a little bit more, I think it makes more sense. Not just that it makes more sense, it gives you this option, whereas just version 1 doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just fixed at 18 months.
So it kind of sounds like Pedro's slider idea might be the best way to go.
But can you just not use it? Like if you think slider is like crazy or tricky, like it doesn't. We don't have to use a slider, right? There could be other ways to do it.
There might be, but I don't know what that would be because, when you're in this what we said earlier, if you're in this 5-year view, you can't see the months, so you can't click on them.
Right.
A slider, at least if you hovered over it, it could start showing you months.
Okay.
And you pick one, and then you could, slide over to another one, and it would.
Right. Time's not highlighted what is currently in view. But even there's a limit to this from what you just said, right? Because I can have 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to me a slider is just, there's a limit, which is fine. Say you've picked 10 years, then the granularity of your slider is dictated by 10 years, right? Because say you've picked like 50 years, right? And then this thing is 50 centimeters, whatever that means, then 1 centimeter represents 1 year. So if you can scroll like the granularity wise 1 centimeter and no more less than that, then you can only dictate it by 1 year, which is fine. Is what I'm saying.
So it needs to be smart enough. If you pick a 10-year range, it needs to do tick marks by years.
Right. And then that's easy. I mean, you just hard code that, right? You just say like, if it's between this and this, then you choose a tick mark of that. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be like scales. I think that's fine, right? So if you pick, for example, if you pick like 100, like you have like a max, right? If you pick like 10 years plus, then it would just show tick marks of I don't know, like years, and then maybe the UI will just look dumb, or maybe we just gracefully degrade somehow. I don't know, but I'm more concerned about like tick marks showing weeks, and then months, and then quarters, and then halves of years, and then years, and then maybe 5 years, and then that's it. Right, like we hard code values in which, based on the start date and end date, then those tick marks would map to the corresponding tick marks there. And if you wanted to get even more fancy, you add in another layer of mapping, so it would be a 2D mapping, which based on start date, end date, and also like viewport, then it would map to appropriate tick marks, right?
I'm trying to think though, if you have the whole point of the slider was to get specific, and if you're picking a 10-year date range and the slider gives you an option to narrow that down into years, I don't think that's very helpful. If you were wondering about 5 years, it would be just as easy to go back into your date picker.
Yes, agree.
So the usefulness here was if you pick 3 months, and then you could zoom in to weeks maybe. Or I'm sorry, that was a bad example. If you pick like a year and you want to see the entire year. Yeah. And then you want to zoom in. Or was it 5 years that we were talking about?
So no, take that example. Like say you have 1 year and then you want to zoom into a month, and then you can now
the ticks should be, the ticks not necessarily on the slider. They don't really need to be ticks at all, but I was thinking like it would actually show days even. Like you would hover in and it would show you, July 30th or something. So that you could get a more specific view of what you want.
Right. And so to me, it's just a little like makes it more flexible in terms of UI. Like even, a first iteration could be, we just don't have the slider. We just literally just have the date picker, which is almost regressing in functionality, because then it's like, why do we do the buttons? But I think that's fine. But ultimately, to me, the slider serves the purpose of um, so for example, all these things I would expect to be persistent on the back end per person anyways, right? So for me as a product manager, I always care about, like, I'm going to set this for like maybe 24 months, 2 years. And then I can always come to this page, and then this will be like maybe like 24 months, it will be there. And then so anytime I can quickly shrink it and then move it around and then see my dates or see my roadmap quickly move. But that's the purpose of this.
Looking at his design again, I don't think he was talking about removing the buttons anyway. So on his, actually,
Mm-hmm.
you pick a date range, it happens to be 5 years. And that slider, that solid pink thing,
Right, this thing here.
yeah, I think that like you have weeks specified right now, so that is all the weeks, let's say, in your viewport right now, and then you just
Right.
slide that entire thing. You don't get to choose the size of it. The size is based on the weeks, months, and quarters buttons.
Okay, so you're saying that this solid bar is static
Mm-hmm.
based
That
on
might
these things.
that might be what he was saying anyway. Maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think after all this discussion, I think my strongest opinion would just be seeing, like, having the ability to see everything on the page, because I think that's very powerful. And then the secondary use case of how you want to move and stuff like that, I think I'm fine with either way.
so this example doesn't include the whole, 5-year overview. So that is something that.
Well, wouldn't it? Like, or are you saying that in this, or your interpretation of Pedro's message here is that you picked 5 years here as the date range, and then
Mhm.
that doesn't necessarily show the all 5 years because it only shows up to 18 months or whatever, right? Is that
Yeah, but I mean,
okay?
we could that solid block, which I took to be a handle. Well, actually, I don't know what I took it to be, but it could be a handle, or it
Right.
could be, we could change it.
Yeah.
If you dragged the two sides
Edges.
of the solid and just stretched it all the way out, it would show the entire thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay,
So,
so maybe Pedro really did think of everything.
yeah. No, I don't know. I'm thinking. Yeah, like that. That's what I would say. I would say that I would want to be able to see all of that. I'm just thinking, is that a reasonable ask though? I think it is. I think just seeing, like, for example, back to this sort of ridiculous thing here, like, this wouldn't make sense now, but it would make sense once we have epics of epics and we figure out how we display epics of epics on a roadmap view. But if you're looking at 5 years, you shouldn't have like 20 things vertically, right? You should have like maybe 10 things. I don't know, like 5 years, maybe three per year, right? So 15 things. So you should be able to see everything vertically and horizontally, I think. Yeah,
3 epics per year.
because those are the high level epics. That's what I'm saying, right? Once we have epics of epics, and if you're looking at like a 5-year plan, then then because you're looking at 5 years, it doesn't make sense that you care about the level of detail there, right? I would think, like, if you're looking at a 5-year plan, you're looking at, oh, the first half of this year we're working on this initiative, and then it overlaps with another initiative. So that's where the epics of epics, I think, thing comes in, right? So to
Wait,
me, it's knowing at a glance, you can see everything at a very lower and lower granularity as the time horizon gets longer and longer. And so if the time horizon gets longer, then your work breakdown structure gets less and less granular, right? So then you wouldn't see all this detail. Like, all these have to be combined into higher level details, like categories, right? So
So
like,
are you thinking this would happen automatically when we have sub epics of epics?
I think we don't have to talk about it now. I
Okay.
just wanted to mention it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
like the vertical dimension. I just wanted to mention that it
Okay.
like it seems silly that I have to scroll vertically that much, but I just wanted to qualify that it won't seem silly in the future because I would expect there would be a view that you would be able to combine them, whether automatically or otherwise.
Yeah, that's good to know because I did mention showing all epics of epics on the this view anyway because I didn't want to expand and collapse, which would clog it even more if it was a 10-year. It would
Right,
be
right, 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 right.
craziness. So good to know. Going back, oops. Um, uh, Going back to the quarters, weeks, months buttons,
Hmm.
if we do treat that slider as you can use it like that or you can drag it, we can get rid of those buttons, I think, anyway.
Right,
It'll just
right.
be up to you how to structure it. If you want to see quarters, you'll have to figure out what that is, I
Right,
guess.
right. Yeah, to me, the quarters, months, weeks, they're just approximations. Like right now, the purpose they're serving is they're just 3 points in this continuous spectrum that GitLab has offered you. And then if we give the entire spectrum, then yeah, then it would GitLab will calculate it for you automatically. Right. So
Yeah. And then, yeah, if you have a huge spread and you're showing the entire 5 years, it won't show the months. But as you redraw, or not redraw, as you change the size of the slider, the whole roadmap is going to reload, I'm guessing, just like it does. And
mhm.
when it does reload, if it's, if the span is within 18 months, we can start showing the month markers again. And if it's
Right,
anything
right, right,
bigger,
right.
we'll just not.
Yeah. So I think next steps is just nailing that design, right? Like, do we want this to reflect like or are we going with this sort of slider design anyways or not? How do you drag it? I think we agree that, or I'm pretty much agreeing with the date picker because I don't see a way to get out of the date picker unless I don't know what do you like.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with date pickers at all.
Well, date range for the whole time slider. Like, what is this date picker?
I think maybe in his it's two, like in one sort of input,
Okay,
and it just
right.
shows, January 30th to February 30th of next year.
Yeah, I mean, you could like put the date picker here and here, which I don't know if that's a good idea. Like on
Oh,
the two edges of here, right?
mm.
Um,
But this way, at least you can tell, you can see visually
you're right.
date dash to the end date, and maybe you can click on either one
Yeah.
to change it, which works. And there's no limit. You can do as little or as much as you want.
Uh,
So I think that's good. You can keep it hot pink, just like in the visual.
um, so I've been playing with like on iOS. I don't use Mac. I don't have a good example of this. But they have like where you trim like something like this, how you drag this.
Hmm.
So it just reminds me of that. I have no idea if this is relevant, but like this is the entire video, I think. And then so you drag from left to right and then so you can trim it.
Hmm.
And I don't remember how it works, but it's like pretty slick because the video can, I think there's like two levels of trimming, but feel free to take a look at this. But this is just what it reminds me of. And it obviously works well on touch because it's touch. So I don't know if this sort of paradigm translates well um,
Oh yeah,
to mouse.
that one looks
This one,
useful because it looks like you can. Oh, that's really small. You can, it looks like you can either drag the whole thing or you can change the size of it if you.
right? The red
Okay.
thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, is that red? It looks pink on my screen.
Um, Pink.
Um,
Same pink as this pink. A little bit
mm,
redder than that pink. Yeah. So that's interesting. So airline ticket UI and video trimming UI, editing UI is related.
It might be better. I find sliders really annoying on mobile, actually, like video editing, just because if I hit the edge, it seems to never work. But
Right.
maybe we're not ever going to be hitting the edge, and it's also we're not using your thumb to do it, so maybe it'll be okay.
Yeah. See, like this is pretty cool because this is like it also shows. I mean, this is probably irrelevant, but this shows the frame.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a visual. No, that's actually sort of analogous, right? So the frame tells you how far you're going, whereas for us, you need tick marks, which is more confusing, right? You need like words to tell you where you are. Whereas in video editing, at least on like an iPad, you know just by looking at the frame because that's the reference itself. Interesting.
Yeah,
So it's almost easier. It's almost like an easier problem, right?
it would be nice if we didn't even have to put ticks or anything. Just nothing shows up until we start dragging it because we can't fit that many things in the bar itself anyway. But I don't think that's very accessible, so
Yeah.
we'll need to think that through.
All right. Well, anyways, this has been insightful, at least for me. So hopefully this is not adding more confusion.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, like so summary is just design something awesome and we'll scope out the first slice of it. So like we don't have to finish it all in one go. So if
Yeah.
a couple of iterations, that's totally fine.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Talk to you sometime later this week then, probably.
All right, have a good day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.